Hello, Haere mai Morena, and welcome to the Bay of Plenty Civil Defence Emergency Management Group. That's the last time I will say that in its entirety. Or CEDM group meeting being held today, Friday, the 28th of March 2025. We are meeting this morning at 10:04 a.m. Very fortunate to be in the chambers of the Rotorua Lakes Council chambers here in Rotorua, Nui Aokaupuna. Thank you, Your Worship, for having us in the wharewa. I do have an opening statement. As the chair of our joint committee, just a reminder, please, to members and staff that this meeting is being recorded and that the recording will be made available on the Bay of Plenty Regional Council website following the meeting. If I can also please remind all present that local government decision-making affords no protection to councillors, council officers and the public for comments made during meetings that are subsequently challenged and determined to be slanderous. Given that we're in year 3 of this current training, we've not had any of that need at our table, and very proudly so for our Toiwana Bay of Plenty body. If I can please invite Chris Brewer to open our prayer this morning with opening karakia te mata.
Tato, karakia te matanga. Tu taua mai runga, tu taua mai aro, tu taua mai roto, tu taua mai wako. Kia tau ai te mauri tu, te mauri ora ki te katoa. Haumi e, hui e, tai.
Thank you, Chris. Much appreciated. So this morning we do start with a welcome. We are joined this morning by Mike Gilwally, who is a team leader, Regional Emergency Management Advisor from NEMA, who is attending on behalf of Lily Foltz, who is an apology for today. We are at agenda item number 1, apologies from members. Have an apology from Councillor Malcolm Campbell from Regional Council, from Councillor Ron Scott from Regional Council, and Deputy Mayor Jim Silver, alternate for City Council. This morning, are there any further apologies? If there are none, I can invite a mover for apologies. I have a mover in the advised out, a seconder in the tip. So all those in favour, please signal aye. Aye. Those against, there are none. The item is carried. We're at agenda item number 2, a public forum. No requests have been received. Moving on to agenda item 3, which is items not on the agenda or not on the original agenda. Please note that the following report has been added to the agenda. C members, committee members at item 8.6, the Bay of Plenty CEDM Group statutory appointments, rescindment of local controller, standing orders 9.12, providing for the consideration of business not on the agenda, which cannot be delayed. This report was not included in the original agenda as notification of the required rescindment was received after the agenda was published. The report cannot be delayed as the powers vested in the local controller requires rescindment as soon as possible and cannot be delayed until a subsequent meeting, being the 4th of July 2025. Can I please invite the mover and seconder to accept adding the report to the agenda? I will mover in the agenda, seconder in the advisor. All those in favour, please signal aye. Aye. Those against, there are none. The item is carried. Moving on to agenda item 4, which is the order of business. Please note that the added report Bay of Plenty CEDM Group statutory appointments, rescindment of local controller will be covered at the end of the public section as item 8.6. We're very wordy this morning, team. Moving on to agenda item 5, which is a declaration of conflicts of interest. Are there any declarations of interest on any of the items on today's agenda? If there are none, we will move on to agenda item 6, which is the public excluded business to be transferred into the open, which there are none. Moving on to agenda item 7, which is the minutes. Agenda item 7.1 is the Bay of Plenty CEDM Group Joint Committee minutes from the 13th of December, way back, 30th of December 2024. We are at page 9 of our agenda this morning. Committee members, we're in your hands. I will just reconfirm very pleased to be joined by both members and alternates this morning. Under that, we encourage and invite full participation from all committee members with voting by members only. Thank you. Members for your hands, if there's no further amendments, edits or clarification, was quite some time ago. Inviting a member in the second, please, for a minute, 3:30. I have a mover, I will take Meluka.
No.
I see you present there, yes, I do have a mover in Meluka. I have a seconder, just checking very quickly, I do have a seconder in Melbourne, all those in favour, please vote aye. Aye. Those against? There are none, the item is carried. We're on page 18 of our agenda team. Agenda item number 8, there are some decisions required. Agenda item 8.1 is the Bay of NTC Group statutory appointments. Let me invite Director Mark Crowe to present this report. Thank you.
Sure. I'll take it back to read. It's rather, sorry, move that a little bit so you can hear me. It's rather procedural nature, and we see these at most committee meetings. This one refers to the statutory appointments of a group controller role, a group program manager role, student, and a recruitment. I'll work through these one by one. So the first, or at least the second recommendation here is seeking the approval of James Jefferson. James is at the back here as an alternate group controller, as defined in section 26(2) of the Act. Point 3 approves the appointment of Julian Reverty, who's also joining us. We'll all be very familiar with Julian. He's been with us for some time. Julian has been an alternate recovery manager for the Bay City Seating Group, and is now moving up to the statutory appointment of group recovery manager. We have an external appointment for the first time, and we welcome online, I believe, maybe. Yes, Jackie Austin-Steed, my neighbour Jackie, as an alternate group recovery manager for the Bay Area PTC Group also. And the fifth and final recommendation then talks to the rescindment of Janelle Corradine as group recovery manager, as defined under section 29(1), and I'll refer to the earlier shift up the roster, if you like, of Julian Reverty to cover that position.
Are there any questions, points of clarification from committee members? Malcolm and Jackie, wonderful to see you. Thank you for joining us online. Yes, Your Honour, we do have recommendations. These fairly procedural but very important should there be a need to enact a civil defence response.
It was seasonal wheelchair, which asked the question before we move to that.
Very good.
I noticed that there are some vacancies of some of the different councils. Does that put us any wrong from the central government point of view in case of an emergency? Or is it just procedural that when they get a new person and that comes through this commission?
Director Clark. Thank you.
Very good question, thank you. Does it create some risk? Yes, it does. Absolutely. And I'll talk to that. I've made direct reference to that to the training KPI report further on through where those vacancies exist currently as a point of liability for your councils, such that you've got to act in those positions when required. So it sounds rather blunt, but yes, definitely requires some attention internally to get those vacancies filled. Those people trained and engaged to act in those roles we're getting to do so.
Does it actually mean a fine or tackle the risk, or is it just really, it doesn't look good?
Are there fines for having no one in those roles? No, there are not. Are there outcomes that could come from post-event reviews related to poor outcomes and response? Absolutely, and we're seeing more of that in the where you don't have people trained and applied to work there. you are very exposed to performance or poor performance, I suppose is strong wording, when you need those people in place. So I mean, is Hunter can say it's a real risk that should be undertaken to get those roles backfilled.
Thank you, Mike Goldie.
No, that was what I asked. There is, yes, there is a statutory obligation for the bonds. There is no fine, but it's points out that if there is an event and there are poor outcomes, it is something that would be looked at. It's a common problem. So,
Well, they rely so they can hear you.
right, apologies to the, I'm not going to piece. Max related.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And a really good question. We will leave that for each of the territorial authority councils to have in-house conversations. And further reiterates the secondary responsibility disorder effects behind every primary role that each council has. This is, of course, the challenge. Everyone in this room will be aware of the primary council role and the responsibilities that sit there, and the additional role of civil defence requirements. So any support that is required from each of our councils to be able to review that role, and we do thank our NEMA team for having that coverage and being mindful of that, particularly with local body elections coming up in October, and see what's available to be able to assist civil defence. Thank you. If there's nothing further, do we have a recommendation? Yes. To receive the report, we have 3 appointments and 1 rescindment. I have a mover for the recommendations. I have a mover in Mayor Tapsell. I will just take the member, please, the convener for voting. I'll take it for member for vote.
Well, that's one, I thought you said alternates were able to fully vote.
Full participation from all committee members. Voting is just for members only at this stage. If a member is present in the room, the voting is to be undertaken. I'll just check that's got Miranda, that's correct. I missed it in the past, there you go. We're away today. So I have a mover in Mayor Tapsell, please, for all recommendations. Is there a second for the 5 recommendations? A seconder in Mayor Drysdale. All those in favour, please signal aye. Those against? There are none. The item is carried. We are on to page 24 of our agenda. Agenda item 8.2, and it is for information only. The Bay of Plenty Seddon Group Office Quarterly Performance Monitoring Report for 24-25. Director, for your hands again.
Thank you. I may be cheeky and pass straight to Chris Brook to talk to us.
I'm going to start so through the chair, your worship. So here's to present the quarterly performance monitoring report for Q3 of this current financial year. Take the last year's read. Just one update to advise since Horizon report. Good news is that all projects are met and are on track, and there are no activities at risk. And we are looking to make one enhancement to our reporting so that, as well as being able to see whether the projects are on track and not started, be able to track, we're looking to track percentage of completion, so you can see if it's 50%, 90% complete. So looking to make one small enhancement for future reports. Happy to take any questions.
Committee members, raise your hands. Any questions, please, with regards to our quarterly performance monitoring? Deputy Mayor,
Thank you, good morning, Chris, thank you. I actually just wanted to show you this report in the previous comments. There was no action from the vacancies and from this committee. And that seems to be when we go through it, we start having a look at the work plan going forward. So will we end up having an action from that previous point? Because when you look at developing a program for elected members and reviewing all of the roles that are in there.
Director Crowe, thank you.
Thank you for your question. Perhaps if I can, and I understand where you're coming from. Perhaps if I could just categorise this so that the element Chris is talking to is around the annual activities within that MBOG group office. Where I can pick up your question of what elements is in the next paper, which will talk to the training and KPI statistics across the group. So maybe get addressed in that question.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Amick, and as was mentioned in the previous agenda item, that we will encourage and support each of the territorial authorities where there is a vacancy to be able to address that in the previous agenda item. Meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick clarification, if I may, you said that all projects have now been started. I assume that excludes the one that we prioritised to 25-26, the assurance, group assurance framework. Sorry.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Committee members, please, we have a recommendation to receive the report by 27 group office quarterly performance monitoring report for 25, quarter number 3. We have a mover. Recommendation of a mover and Mayor. Wait a second. Second and Mayor Tapswell, thank you. All those in favour, please signal aye. Those against, there are none. The item is carried. Thank you, Ms. Burrows, for joining us. We're on page 30 of our agenda this morning. Here item 8.3, APT7 group training, KPI measurement as seconded earlier by Director Crowe. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through the chair. So this paper you will be relatively familiar with the structure of. Pertains to training KPIs and key performance indicator, how we measure the statistics across the group. We have in the last 12 months gone through a couple of iterations of this to make the data easier to read through, if you like, to understand. So you'll see there's a series of bar graphs through there, which I'm sure you picked up on, which highlight the capability gaps where they exist, potentially where they exist within councils. You will also see towards the back, there are some red and green bar graphs, and they pertain to those key leadership roles and those statutory appointments we looked at earlier around controllers and recovery managers. I suppose if I can provide some overview of that, while there are some smaller deficits in the IMT, so the staffing numbers for the centres and the functional staff, they themselves aren't necessarily the alarming part. We can pick up on that, and we can train any staff across council to fulfil those roles. The key appointments at the back around the controllers and the recovery managers are important. Those key leadership roles you cannot just get anyone to step up to. We have an appointment process, we have a development pathway for each of these functions, and that takes time to catch up on these roles. So to me, I think we talked last time about understanding key risks with these papers. This is the key risk. Both of these elements for controllers and recovery managers, the key risk to your councils and to the seeding group is having these roles filled. You can see the red illustrations, pages 34 and 35. Will show you where those deficits are. Obviously, the group is happy to work with the council and things they can do with running through the pathway to support those functions, but really should be an area of focus at senior leadership level throughout your councils. Happy to take any questions on that.
Meeting.
Thank you. So I'm looking on page 34. I guess, but looking at the it's appointed controllers and then trained appointed controllers. Could you perhaps explain the process to the red part of the graph, green, so that they become trained? Is that a quick process? Is it a long process? Is it highly involved?
How do we convert them?
Yeah. How do they get you?
In short, it's quite involved. And there is a cost to doing it. The cost is certainly not the issue. The issue is getting people on the pathway and keeping them engaged with the work. So aside of someone's background and their skills and attributes and the process to get them through a joint committee, can be achieved. So that's step one, but we do have, you may recall last year, we approved the control and development pathway with Karen Gordon was here. And it talks about keeping the people that act in these statutory roles current, but also going through a mandatory pathway to get signed off to act. Things such as the RAMS course, which is run externally, which is two-part sort of program at the moment. Some of it's residential, some of it's workforce based, are key components. And there's several people on both of these rosters that will have been appointed and finish that control pathways. What's the risk of that? For some it's higher than others. So some will may perhaps have been operating in the space for some time anyway, so got a fairly good awareness. Others, in part, we could be seeing them in life. So they could be undertaking the role with the best intent, but actually finding when they've got in there they don't have some of the skills or knowledge or exposure that need to be successful. So there's equally a risk there. Having a name on the roster doesn't solve the problem. Well, it's having fully trained and competent to undertake the task.
Yeah, thank you, Mark, that's helpful. So I guess the follow-up question is, who decides to be trained? Is this a nationally recognised qualification, or is it what group has decided is the requisite experience or training?
With respect, that goes through the control and development pathway that was signed off here last year. So once they've met those steps, and discussions with myself on the other side as to their comfort to now operate in that space, that completes that worksheet.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Luca.
See on page 35, the WDC is wanting systems, could you just elaborate on assistances? You also talk about mention costs.
So if I can break that into two parts, maybe I'll deal with the financial cost first, which was actually the second question. And then I'll come back to the first. I'll invite Julian to Julian, I'll invite you to come to the table in a moment just to talk to your staff and that is working with at the moment to help through that journey. So there's the two parts of the cost. There's it's run by RANZ is the major component, and that's in two elements. One is around $1,200 to $1,300 now. Forgive me if I've got that wrong. And the part two of that is somewhere closer to $6,000. That cost is met by group. So that's a good outcome. But what we need to do is get them engaged in that program, create some capacity in their day role so that they can attend both elements of that. But the cost is met by group, aside of the salary while they're away, residential element, the program, but we pick up with the $7,000 to $8,000 with the cost of delivery. A lot of the other technical elements we also deal with in-house. So for councils, the cost is the time to release someone to perform what is actually a statutory function. In terms of the engagement with your new folk that you have on that, I will open to Julian and ask him to talk to that. Is more of a thank you, Julian.
Going through the chicken. If we look at page 35 for recovery images, in the case of, I'll just speak through a couple of things. We're working really closely to fill positions and to train positions. So in the case of group, we have come on board in the next round some new alternate group recovery, so that really strengthens that, so that we bring in this training. But that's in training. KDC Calvo, they are missing the second one. They have had a sole person there for many years and fully trained, but they do miss the second identified person. When it's over Poki, we're working really closely with some general management appointments. And we are now working very closely in the interim for risk management, statutory role of myself and the alternates fill the statutory requirement if you require service recovery. It's a technique to allow the statutory powers to be used if you need it. But the key thing there is, we don't know the community, we're not fully familiar with the council, it's very important that ODC starts to fit that, and we are working closely with them now to get those roles identified and go through the process. Somebody Rotorua, again, very familiar person, just missing a secondary recovery identification. TCC, very strong, they've got identified at high levels there. Western Bay have identified another person, and we're going through a process of consideration. When it comes to Whakatane, they have new people in place and very strong policy planning people, which is excellent for this position, that are brand new. They have a number of very skilled senior people that know recovery in Whakatane, but the identified statutory positions, they are brand new, they're being appointed, and now we're just putting them on the path for training. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Joe. Easy to meet you. Personal talk again. Thank you, Chair, through you. Just want to share that this is a volunteer role outside of the usual job description.
Thank you for your question through the chair. That's actually a tricky answer, so I pause. Not necessarily, so, and that would be contracting in place. So, by example, some, I don't talk specifics, obviously, some appointments and the BOP line have these written in as obligations within their job description specifically tied to this function. Therefore, I can't answer hospitals or of contract emergency workplace. But for us, it's hard, some are tied.
Thank you very much. I just asked that question because I'm aware that these very important roles likely attract managers or senior managers who time-wise and capacity-wise are very limited. And then so I can understand why there may be limitations and a key barrier to putting people forward. But I do wonder if that is perhaps something that we should have a good discussion with and just compare. So if the Regional Council is a great example, how can we make sure that we are allowing capacity? But that's certainly something that I'll take on board because I've seen we do require another secondary recovery manager. My next question is just in terms of the dates of the upcoming training. Thank you for the dates provided with February and March. How frequently do you do these? Like what's the fastest that we can get people trained and filled in these positions if we were to prioritise it within our councils?
Thank you, and through the chair. I suppose that in some ways that would depend on which elements your staff needed to focus on. So some controllers have more capacity than others. So if you look on page 36, you'll see the functional courses that have been delivered recently. They may or may not engage in some of those, and they may or may not need to engage in some of those. In terms of the external, the RANS element, as we might refer to it, being the main deliverable to achieve competency in here. They are run externally. Mike, please correct me if I'm wrong, it's about quarterly. Do you know off the top of your head? Quarterly, and so yeah, that would be the short answer. They're based on vacancies, what's in each program and each cohort as it comes through. Typically, we don't have much trouble getting people on the course, so there doesn't tend to be a big backlog. However, the sooner we act to get those people into the system, the sooner we can keep.
Thank you very much, and I do know in the attendance that is that there is space for usually between 15 and 25 people, but the people that are attending it's quite significantly lower than that. So yeah, again, we'll carry that forward. I'm going to ask the dumb question, but it might be helpful. Do the controllers or the recovery managers need to be council staff? And I just ask because when we've seen in places like even in our region, when there's been a flood risk, it was actually community board members that were there on the ground and were able to assist because they were working out of town or the cities. And many of our districts do have the key risk areas are rural forest lakeside communities as well. So just a question on whether we can consider that, because I know in terms of the resource management act, we do commissioner training, and that's usually elected members as well, who are able to fulfil that role if required. And the other reason I ask that is because we also work very closely with iwi as well. And in times of crisis or disaster, we rely heavily on marae, and naturally they have their own, we have our title for what we call it, but they will have their own person who's in charge, who is the key go-to, who is communicating with everyone, who is helping to provide leadership in that space. I just wonder if we are continuing to have challenges moving forward, whether that is something that is possible, and the councils could look at even some brief kind of contracting position or job description to bring them in, but just in terms of the practical realities of when something goes down, who are the people who will definitely be there and will have the capacity, because their current contribution to council is a part-time or casual way anyway, so they do have a connection. Just something to consider.
Thank you. I might comment and just provide some context. Some of that. The first point, forgive me if I miss anything, just looking back at it. The first point is the training statistics provided on page 36 are not necessarily the controller elements we're talking about. This is over training the IMT staff and general staff across the board. It won't fix the statutory appointment issue that we should separate. In terms of using external staff, and I'll just use this in the statutory appointed roles of controller and recovery manager. Can we use external staff? Well, actually, we have the first one today, which is Jackie Rollison-Steve. So Jackie sits with the Public Service Commission, which is great. Obviously has good ties to the networks we would be engaged with anyway, so there's a distinct advantage there. Jackie's previously with council, so understands local government very well, so some real tight nuance. Typically, and I'll just pull another point out of your commentary, elected members or community board members tend to be tasked otherwise. When we think about the role of recovery managers or controllers in particular, the powers delegated to them, including the financial delegations and the intent under which they act. My advice would be to be very careful when you look externally, not for risk, but for fit, to make sure that the people we consider that, and we're happy to provide some guidance on it, are really going to have the capacity, be able to engage and have those skills and attributes that they will need to succeed in that space. When the balloon goes up and so, it can be not a nice space to operate in, and unless you've got the skills to succeed there, you probably won't. So we need to be really careful about needing to fill that roster, fill those statutory obligations, get a job done, but also protecting the individuals who are asking to do that. It's quite clear. But happy to engage with that process anywhere we can to be assisted.
Thank you very much. And the reason I ask that question is I can immediately think of people who are very highly skilled and trained, either national or international rafts being champions as an example. So they have a very intimate knowledge of these areas, these environments, these communities, and of course also have knowledge of how council works. So I didn't hear a no. So we might have further discussion. The outcome I'm wanting to achieve is making sure that we have the best possible people, and if the people within our councils are already incredibly busy doing their rewarded roles, perhaps we could be a bit more open-minded, but I think we will have a discussion. Thank you very much for your answer.
Miriam, thank you.
Just through this year, sort of following on from the council's question, we often have staff that are trained with us, these roles that they leave us and not necessarily come out of the council. So I understand where you're coming from, and I you go very wrong if people look too into that one. So I understand the complications, especially around the controller and the. But my question is, and it's great to see Jackie again. It's those staff that we're losing, it may not leave the area. Is it a possibility to have them? We are trying to find our position, but is it a possibility to have people that are suitably trained and maybe have leading the organisation carry on with those roles and maybe even covering, multiple councils?
Thank you. Short answer to that is yes. That's how we know that. And in fact, if I may just provide some context of arrangements I've seen elsewhere in the country where that is done, on a cash and contract basis with some form of remuneration tied not only to when those people are acting, but also they need to remain current, so attending training. Because there is some currency that's required rather than just a cold call day, but that is allowed for in the Act and it is used elsewhere in the country. But again, it comes down to that matching process for the role and function we require, but also the capability to develop currency and protection for the individuals. Just to touch on the last one, all of the local controllers appointed across Oakland are able to act in any council. So once appointed in one, you can act in a local. It comes with the delegations.
Thank you, team. Look, I'm really mindful that this was actually raised earlier in the meeting on agenda item 8.1. And Mike, colleague from NEMA, I will pick up on a comment that was made earlier. This is not unfamiliar across the country. I think what's been demonstrated from the discussion is the challenge that primarily councils will employ staff based on the primary role that has been advertised for. We employ engineers initially, primarily. CSOs, administrators, IT people, that is the primary role. The secondary consideration, and there are some contractual arrangements that are made, I'm sure McTavish will correct me if I go slightly out of range, is actually the second consideration is I will frame it in this way, the additional role of training for civil defence emergency management, which is why you actually do see, and I have myself and MedTabs will have seen that table rearranged where the primary role has changed. As in, we have an additional agenda item added today for that very reason. So you have this perhaps scenario where we do have trained staff who are no longer, so civil defence trained staff, but are no longer council employees, but fully capable of doing the role. And then you have, I think Julian shared that in some of our territorial authorities, of our councils, we have new staff who have signalled, yes, I will say additionally on top of my primary role, I am available, whatever the words might be, I'm very keen to learn to be able to have the skills. The reality is we do what we do for councils every day until the unfortunate event there is an emergency response that's required. That becomes the only role we're responsible for. It is perhaps a challenge for the form. The function is very clear around emergency management, response, need, recovery, if there ever is such a thing. But there is fundamentally a challenge around that, and we'd like to see it's why the table of vacancies that Deputy Mayor picked up on earlier, that changes over time because it's your primary role in the council. That is the kaupapa me, the kaupapa matua tuatahi. Behind that, secondary to that, is the additional emergency management. Like, I'm not sure if that's been conveyed across the country in terms of the challenge, but there is a proposal that's been raised, a consideration raised by the TAPSL that we may have former employees of all of our councils who have received the necessary training to some high levels. I understand that the employment is no longer valid at a time that we have a capability to skill set. And yeah, to add to that, please.
I do, I have some observations and reflections, some of them will be more fulsome answers to my update later. But you've got a real life issue in front of you, and to answer the intensive question, it is common parts of New Zealand to have people outside of government contracted back and group recovery manager and group controller. But I will acknowledge some of the things that Mark said, particularly about the fit for the role and the attributes required. If you think about the role of a group controller, group recovery manager, or even group manager, if you think about attributes, knowledge and skills, as knowledge is things you need to know, skills are the things you must have, and attributes is the way being. Knowledge that we've got these people out there with the attributes, and we need to build on the skills. So, and maybe I'll talk about those really. So, you've got to be careful about the types of people you put into these roles, particularly. So, I'll give it. So that's my observation and reflection on this conversation. I've talked more when it comes to my decision.
If you need me.
I'm interested in regional council's process where through the recruitment stage, I'm assuming it makes some identification of people that might have the right set of skills and fit for the role and write it into your contract, and whether that is something that we should perhaps consider and incentivise. So that's kind of written into a contract that may be required, you know, after 12 months, that might be one of those negotiation points of if the personality of the person and the relationships that they're having and the knowledge that they've gained looks fit for purpose, then that could be a negotiation point for them and for relative council. Any comments, Fiona, on whether that, how that works with you yourselves?
Please.
Yes, in all of the council contracts, there is a requirement to be involved in civil defence emergency economics. That's in all of our job descriptions. And then we're very keen in terms of leadership, position opportunities that we have the opportunity to with the options of this involved. So it's very attractive. Staff creek.
You continue, there's nothing, there's some great considerations, and we do look forward to your Google update, Mike, from Nina. We do have a recommendation, please, team. To receive the report back and to set a group training KPI. Number in here, Drysdale, and a second in here, Luca. All those in favour, please signal aye. Aye. Those against, there are none. The item is carried. We are on page 38. Like agenda item 8.4, which is the NEMA National Emergency Management Agency update. Faculty CM Group Joint Committee. Over in your hands, thank you.
Thank you very much. I started out making a couple of notes. I wanted to initially here to Emma for picking up on something which is really relevant today around building capability and capacity. But then I ended up writing down everybody's name in terms of the way that this committee is engaging on some really live issues. So we did never look at and my friend was right. That's not the name. Apologies for that. So you are absolutely engaging on some really important issues in the conversation here today. I'll take my update as read, and I'll lean into the government's response to the recommendations of the and the opportunity provided that is coming to try and influence the lift in the system performance bill. So the minister is explicitly focused on improving outcomes for sort of distributed emergency management. And we're going to cabinet, just looking to mark the committee keeps it. And I think I got this.
I think it'd be good to get an overview of both, particularly with the timeframes and opportunities for feedback, Mike.
Yeah. Just want to go for it.
Give me, Mike, if I can just get you to speak into the microphone, sure, you know, so attendees, that'd be great, thank you.
Yep, I'll do that. Following the North Island severe weather events, the minister reported back to cabinet with a bundle of recommendations. There were 15 of them, and a commitment to report back to cabinet in the first quarter of this year with a investment pathway to improving the system. That is due to happen next month, and I can't predict what any one can any decision that cabinet is going to make. However, the sorts of themes, the focus areas that the minister will be going to cabinet with will be improving a whole society approach, sort of the government, building capability and capacity, which we've had quite rich discussions on here today, enabling the system and focusing on delivery. There's a couple of things in there that resonated in today's discussion, where I think post 14th or 15th of April, there will be a decision around A, what is going to be done to the system, and B, around bill. And bill is enabling legislation to effect to the improvements. There are some focus areas that I think are worth this committee thinking about. And these came up yesterday at Otago's joint committee. That whole society approach and supporting communities and engaging communities, supporting and enabling local government, and in particular the role of KEEPS and joint committees, but also the role of national and regional plans and interregional planning. Also national standards and assurance settings. So the control and development pathway that we were talking about this morning is up to this group at this point in time to understand control and development pathway. So the assurance element and being consistent at a national level. So after April, we're likely to see some engagement, I would suggest, by the minister on this, an opportunity to make a submission on the bill. I think you've got plenty to speak into in terms of your context. Yep. And in particular, the role of controllers, obviously to have controls from outside organisations and local government, and how that sort of managed. Those are all the things that you can raise in submission. Other things that will be happening as part of the bill and the minister's roadmap for investment, particularly around the naming system. So that's around exercising, national exercises, reasonable exercises, and the technology that we use to deploy to enable the system to stand up. I'm going to answer any questions on that, but I'll
That's one question for you, Madam Chair, but so the consultation for the emergency management bill coming out fairly soon. In my words, thinking that we as a joint committee made a submission on that, or is it going to be left to the council?
Entirely up to councils. I would say that there would be actually, this would just be my recommendation is that jointly, as I look at it, there's more strength in having a combined submission. I would lean on Director Crowe to have staff prepare a submission for us on behalf of the entire league. That's the entire purpose of having this arrangement in this group. As we have in the past, from memory, the last submission that was made was on behalf of the one group under former director.
I'll be supportive of that and probably know that the individual councils are streets and their own submissions. This actually, I think, the expertise and leadership around the state as well. To get John's viewpoint and suggestions.
We'll take your lead on that. That sounds like a fabulous idea. Again, reiterating that doesn't limit or restrict individual councillors from making submissions, but definitely would be supportive of a joint approach with that. I've just heard an articulation earlier in the meeting, Deputy Mayor, I think that if there are some vacancies, that actually is the entire 21 fund that comes together. Deputy Mayor, I'm making that minimum. Okay.
Oh, sorry, really good.
Really good, Lacey. Thank you.
The system that you talk about, Mike, is mostly about, well, what I've heard is mostly about human resource and human capital development. But in a disaster, there's also another system which we don't talk much about, because it's kind of swept under the carpet, is the financial system. How is our financial system being, how has that been addressed in the context of emergency management, especially catastrophic ones? Like banks are part of our society.
Yeah, that's a great question. I couldn't give a fulsome answer to it. When we're talking about a robust national emergency management system, we're thinking system sector, and how does the system itself activate across all of government? So that is the public sector as well as our institutions and sector coordinating entities in the lifeline space at that level. And when we activate the system, we're thinking about an initiative emergency, something absolutely catastrophic. So I can't answer that question of the financial system. That is what the expertise. When we're talking about the emergency management system, we're talking about government standing up and enjoying that response.
But it's critical.
Yes.
So maybe this team does need to know about that. Explore,
Maybe that could be part of the solution.
yeah, okay, deal with that. Thanks.
You Deputy Mayor, and then can you taps, please?
Thank you. I guess my question is more about having scrolled through the catastrophic handbook. And it's quite a heavy read, and I'm wondering who is this for? Bearing in mind that our primary purpose is to help keep our community safe and to give them confidence in the event of emergency that we know what we're doing. And I don't know if that handbook will give me confidence. The long read.
Yeah, it is a long heavy read. It is orientated towards the system and the national controller, and the national response across, I think, 11 work streams, of which 4 are a priority for us to develop further. So those are around mass relief, international assistance, supply chain logistics. I can't remember the last one. There is 4. So those are 4 priority areas, but it really is orientated towards the national controller and the alternate and the national crisis management centre standing up and delivering the much initial actions. or actions to deliver a response.
Okay, just supplementary. I just look at the contents page, aside from having a bit of a scroll through, there doesn't seem to be much about relationship with Māori. And we know that in a disaster, the marae and Māori play an absolutely crucial role. And it just reads a little bit like, oh yeah, and them if we need them. And I would have prefaced them in a real wide position and you've got the engagement and we're on.
I agree. That's the natural observation. Yeah, I can't speak to the authors that wrote it, or for the authors that wrote it, but
It's been described as a milestone handbook for New Zealand.
well, I think it,
Mike, if I may.
Yeah.
Probably I can help here.
Mr. Crowe, thank you.
There is a secondary piece of work under this, so as Mike sort of highlights the catastrophic plan that you'll have there as a national target, as a national legal document. We are undertaking our program of work for catastrophic planning at a regional and therefore local level. I think you'll see, certainly including engagement with iwi will come through there and figure, and a lot of that content should be more tangible. We should be able to see how that beds with Bay of Plenty region as opposed to perhaps a high level government structure document. This will be something that's delivered and with a strong focus on Bay of Plenty as a region.
Okay, well, I accept that and look forward to it coming, but I just want us to be careful that we're not just putting together something to create our own employment. But we have to be able to link what we've got here with the national plan to regional, to operational and the local. And this seems like a lot of working and a lot of people involved. Thinking about value for money.
Yeah, that's a very valid point, thank you. And I think that the document that's been created by Nima will be their intent well. I would agree that it's not a document and it's in a form that you have there that's overly applicable to a regional level. But primarily because it wasn't the target audience for it either. The intent was that we would do some secondary planning after that. And while there'll be probably a long piece of work because of the complexity of it, it won't be overly resource heavy to have it undertaken. It's more time and thinking. We have some resource allocated to think about to undertake that.
Right, further comment?
Thank you, Premier. Mick, anything further?
Yeah, I guess we're sitting around the table representing our councils and our councillors. And there's one topic that councillors are more interested in anything else is what's happening at the Civil Defence Committee and the regional defence. And so we need to be able to go back to our councillors and say, hey, there's some really great things that are happening here. And so when I first saw the item, catastrophic handbook, you know, and its description of itself seems great, straight to it and then just grown. So we're going to be developing resources for councils to be able to share with their councils, you can share with the community boards, and share with their search teams. So I feel like this is a long way from where that is.
But yes, you're right. And to Mark's point, the example that he's given around development something through regional context, I'll give another example. The One Fault has a framework which is a high level framework around the One Fault scenario and the decisions that will be need to be made in response to that. A target, for example, has developed its own One Fault response at a regional level, suitable for their context, and the local councils are then taking that regional response plan and working out their part in the delivery of that. And I imagine that is the same thing that will happen in other regions across the country. One other example too is the plan is orientated towards catastrophic. This is where on New Zealand.
Gabrielle.
No, Gabrielle's not catastrophic. I would say category absolutely for the people in the region, yes, but it did not bring the government or the system or the country to its knees. You know what I mean?
Those are more rare than all of the other disasters that.
Oh, well, yeah, no, this is a really good, debate, you're absolutely right. And we have, you know, more frequently we have, emergency events that happen locally and regionally. You're absolutely correct, but we also have to be mindful of those, large scale, credible events that can and do happen. And, you look across the world and they happen, not happening all the time, but they do happen, and we need to be ready with a way of manage that, and thinking about how do we get mass relief into this country or international assistance into this country when we have something as catastrophic as the economic subduction zone taking off, or you're in volcanic field and you need to evacuate substantial parts of your population. What does mass relief look like? International assistance, supply chain logistics, all that sort of stuff. And we need to do the high level thinking, high level principles as or decision making in a handbook like this. I think it is time that we turn our minds to it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Welcome in Deputy Mayor Scringer from West Bay Plenty. Thank you for joining us. John, great to see you. We'll move to Mayor Tapps. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, through you. I was quite interested to see the Starlink mentioned in this report as well. Connectivity is something that is really, really important in these situations. But it also made me think whether cybersecurity is actually part of this plan, and whether, sorry, not plan, it's actually part of the government looking at this emergency management bill. It just is a really significant cybersecurity risk, and we really take it for granted. And I've spoken with peers in other countries that do use AI, and they tested how safe their financials were in AI were able to crack in like 8 seconds or something insane. And so, although we think a lot about natural disasters, I also wonder if cybersecurity has it been considered. And you know, there's, although we have safe sort of like AI that we recommend in both councils and government agencies, I do have no doubt that, you know, sometimes a staff member might just use ChatGPT and all of a sudden it's very accessible. So I just wonder if that has been considered in a case that either government agencies or local government were all of a sudden to lose control of the system. And so while one of the priority areas has been the new system, whether that has also been taken into consideration, because we would be pretty screwed if we were to go use the system and we couldn't even access it because of a cyber threat or malicious hacking.
That is a great question, and I'm not aware of cyber coming through any of the conversations, though through the chair, Mark has been involved in some of the sprints that I've been involved in, and he may have some insights about it.
Thank you, Mike. Director Crowe.
Thank you, the chair. Yes, very good question. That is, as far as I'm aware, and it hasn't been caught in any of the sprints in the civil defence emergency management space. CDM is an elite agency for cybersecurity that perform more like bigger agencies such as TCSB or NZSIS. I know that they are very current in this space, very much considering cybersecurity and the use of AI. As a group manager, I have briefings on that from both of those agencies. That happens more often than you would think. But I actually believe they've briefed some council chief executives and mayors as well. I'm not sure what the pathway to obtaining that briefing, but it's something that New Zealand government is very, very active with. That CD will play a support role should it occur. The second way I will put on the end, and I'll take a liberty because I acknowledge that, is in terms of the use of AI, that would really be down to council internal policy settings. I completely respect Fiona and the team being very active in this space to manage the PRC's policies, which we follow as an administrative authority for ourselves. So I'll certainly encourage that internal things yourselves as well to make sure those risks are mitigated.
Thank you very much, and I think there might be something we could include in the submission as well, but there is also a positive side to AI and artificial intelligence. And I do also wonder if part of this, part of the emergency management bill, there's been consideration into how we can use AI such as technology that's available that can instantly provide an update. I know we get the text to say tsunami's coming, but there is also technology available that monitors rivers or stream levels through use of our CCTV cameras, of which we have plenty. They're able to provide residents with a safe way to either get home or get to, like they will say, this bridge is down or this road is closed, and yeah. So there is also, I want to acknowledge some very good technology that's available. And so I do also wonder if on the other hand, the government's looking at a new system, whether they're also looking at how we can use technology for up-to-date data and information being sent to residents as well.
Okay, thank you, Luca.
Yes, it comes down to what you define a catastrophe is, and if we're talking about events like what you're talking about, then that threatens the entire viability of the nation, and I think cybersecurity becomes a very minor support than that. It's really about the food production system, your ability to get water. That's what it comes down to, a severe one. One thing that's probably not mentioned here is oil supply. Whilst we've always taken it for granted, if diesel stopped getting into this country tomorrow, people will probably starve. Because en masse, because nothing gets to the supermarket, no transport system at all. And that's not even mentioned here. I mean, it's actually quite a serious threat. It seems benign, but the implications are quite profound for that sort of thing. So I think we're not worried about internet, or we're worried about just eating in a really truly catastrophic event like that. I think we can put that in a solution.
Some great things in the submission, and I'm sure our lovely Lisa glasses. Let's wide awake, capturing all that great content of this submission.
It's quite cool.
On behalf of our employee minority, thank you team. So a great discussion. Actually, look, very, very interested. I did have similar thoughts to look at what was the threshold to actually be considered as a catastrophic event. What is very subjective. Not saying it's catastrophic to one person or even one it could be vastly different in the way that it's felt. So I don't see space for I would think that that was absolutely catastrophic. Some great comments and observations and feedback from Deputy Mayor Imig. I would propose that this has always been the table in the Bay of Plenty Head, that the leadership is from the ground up. So rather than asking the question of what's happening, that we actually say, I didn't see this in this particular handbook. This would be what is best for the people of our communities. So rather than, if not that, then what? So that has been the approach that I've observed in the time that we've been here since 2022. Also just a conversation with Chair McTavish here that the inclusion or consideration of the AI, use of AI will be picked up in the KEG committee meeting. With all the members of the KEG committee, the coordinating executive group, forgive me, we do have a lot of acronyms in here. We'll also just note the cultural consideration. Our liaison cultural advisor is not a fan of anything artificial, but perhaps it's the way and the manner in which it's shared and explained, such as monitoring river levels or whatever, the way in which it's being used. Be beyond us to be able to have a conversation team. If there's nothing further, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Just a quick question on the resilience fund. Like, is it unlikely this group might receive any of that resilience fund?
The decisions aren't out yet, so I can't preempt any. And it's not something I have visibility of. I just know that they're being considered by the director. I would imagine by the time of the next joint committee, there will be decisions, absolutely.
Thank you, Tim. Let's, with regards to the resilience fund, let's go from the bottom up. Let's start from within our own councils to see if there is a need. And then raise that up. We did experience that in this triennium under former Director Bill J. We have some applications from our Bay Plenty region. Just conversation. Director Crowe, if you can share that with the committee, thank you.
My apologies, Madam Chair. Yes, we also had 5 applications for Bay region. Issues applications. See how they are. Assess the due course.
Great, thank you, members. If there's nothing further with regards to agenda item 8.4, thank you, Mike. And thank you for coming from Christchurch via Auckland, Tamaki Makaurau this morning. We have a recommendation, please, that the Bay of Plenty CM Group Joint Committee receives the report. National Emergency Management Agency NEMA update, Bay of Plenty CM Joint Committee, 28th of March 2025. Do we have a mover? Mover in Metapsol, and a seconder. I have a seconder in Medinia. All those in favour, please signal aye. Aye. Those against? There are none. The item is carried. We are at agenda item 8.5, the verbal update from the Director of NEMA. Director Crowe, deal with you all done with that in your hands again. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully you won't hear too much more from today. And thank you for your update, Mike. A lot of the content in yours I was also going to refer to, so hopefully I'll be okay. There's 3 or 4 key points I'd like to run through. One of them is a significant delivery in our work program for the year, being the Bay 8 program. For those of you that don't know, I'll give you a quick overview. The coordinating executive group back in 2023 approved a funding invite for us to provide a residential training program in the Bay of Plenty available to all councils to send staff along to for what is effectively a week-long residential program. The intent of the program is to bridge a gap. So we provide a lot of technical training. You see some of it referred to in the statistics today. A lot of function courses, function and show courses, so on and so forth. With those, there is a measured element of application and they're technical based. The intent of the Bay 8 program is to give participants an opportunity to apply that somewhat more, but also to develop soft skills and how to apply some of that and how to influence with some of that training. So we conducted the second and final round in this funding envelope last week in Kodo. Thank you to Mia for opening for us. It was a very successful program. 22 participants from across the region took part. We have had some really outstanding feedback on the course. I was surprised. It started, but opened on a Sunday. My phone went on a Monday with someone wanting to provide me feedback, and I thought, well, that can't be good this early. But it was actually quite opposite. The feedback was coming in thick and fast. Really honest to how it was being appreciated by the participants. The feedback getting back to their agencies. So with that, I'll thank you, Paul, who led that for us. We're together both in the lead up and the delivery. So great job, very well done. So as I say, 22 participants from across most organisations across the region, and that concluded last Friday. We will take the feedback that comes back and use that to form up a paper to provide an update to Care in due course, and I think seek an ongoing delivery probably, once we work through the feedback, down to how that looks. At a national level, this is delivered frequently in one other region, Canterbury at the moment, and a couple of others running trial. I think it'll be part of a larger solution at the end of the day, but that will be the decision to make. For us, it has formed a bridge between the standard training and what is provided at a national level, being the New Zealand Emergency Management Assistance Team Program. Show my sticker in front of this computer there, reinforcing his participation with that. And it'll be interesting to see how they can see this dovetailing into that journey, that pathway from council entry through to professional leadership across the sector. EMAP, interestingly, ran their annual program last week, to which Andrew attended. A few that he liked, but I understand it was very successful as well. So, second item I'll talk to is a tsunami project update, and you'll all be aware it's a very significant item for us on this year's program. We've reported back into this forum regularly on it. The current update is that GNS have finished the modelling and they have completed their peer review. It's come back to the group as a draft data set, which we have first round of consultation. This was on council staff, and that is now in the process of being finalised. I've been told that will be by the end of March, so I'm looking forward to that today. I suppose very near future. From there, we will come back to the councils again, and that will, particularly the coastal territorial authorities in the first instance, and that will help confirm your new tsunami evacuation zone. So that program of work will continue from 1st of April. We will have the final documents to work on your new evacuation zones. I'll also make reference to a meeting late last year, September 27. Late last year, with Councillor Campbell raised an issue around updated inundation modelling, which we will now be able to close off because it's actually being completed. The final part of my update, it just refers to 2 key staff changes within the group office that will be of interest, and with that I will welcome James Jefferson. James is our advisor for those of you that have not met. He fills views of current to Australia last year, and farewell Chris Brewer. And Chris, you've been with us a short time but made a great impact. Thank you for your assistance. Chris will roll back to the wider Regional Council whānau now. You will still see him on the region, but not quite as frequent. So that's my report.
Thank you, Director Crown.
Can you just repeat the date that you go for? To be able to expect the final evacuation zone maps.
So the final data set will come from GNS to us by the end of March, which is days from. We will then engage with councils to deliver and work through the development of the evacuation planning, evacuation maps. So there's a little bit of nuance here, a little bit of local knowledge that needs to come in, and we allow them sort of that community through the council.
That process is expected to turn that.
That would depend on how the engagement process goes across council. So it'll vary depending on ability of staff and so on and so forth. So I would be remiss to give you a date list.
Thank you.
Thank you, Luca. Deputy Mayor Nika.
I'm more than good. Thank you for the report that's still there. I haven't been invited, I don't know if I was invited, thrown into that space and I thought, why would I be here? Just want to delve into the area of union participation. And having sat at the end of the week with the group, certainly a lot of people within that room that acknowledged that we went out so wonderful, beautiful because they had local, and you were there, Mark, both. Why I mention it is people usually leave a training session and you can't wait to get the hell out of there on the last day. They can't. This group here sat there and waited so they could acknowledge COVID-19 and see really take a look that some of them acknowledge that they don't contact their situations in their councils. What I'm saying is it's quite important that going forward we would have those emergencies that have that participation and interactions is key. It's all that we do. And as people here, just want to acknowledge that. The other thing, I was fortunate enough to sit there and watch the growth and enhancement of trade and development on a very brief scale, me. It's amazing as to what it looks like as a well-oiled machine. Didn't mention it to you that day too, because all the parts of the jigsaw come together. Really people outside of the school. So just an acknowledgement that they train.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Rangihika. If I might just share with committee members, we also had our iwi liaison cultural advisor, Makai Matua Te Hauka Kawa Te Rere. He actually stood the mayor and the deputy mayor up from a pre-arranged meeting. He was so enjoying connecting with Te Hononga with his new mokopuna, who are all actually employees of all the councils of the Bay of Plenty. But it was really nice to have him come along. He has a number of new mokopuna, he tells me, that are rates collections officers and finance team and customer service officers across all our different councils of the Bay of Plenty, but was an honour, he tells me, asked me to convey that to each of our councils to be able to communicate what that really was. There is a place that our kaumata often move at, which can be a very calming time in times of a event emergency response, where people are asking, they are vulnerable and often they are angry, and that was a real one of them to be able to support all of our 22 participants. I think it was Director Craig, 22. Thank you. If there's anything further, committee members? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I was just, thank you, Mark, for giving me an update, and I was just wondering in reference to reports that we received, whether like, we've got the controllers of recovery, the assistant managers, paragraphs. Is it worthwhile that we also include district council cert teams? I'm only asking that because I'm aware that in Whakatane, we've got 3 out of 8 that have all gone through the training, and they know what's happening in their own different community when the emergency happens. But it seems like for us, it's slow to get the other ones up and running. I don't know what the situation is with the councils, but whether they do it board by board or community by community. But is it any value to actually include that? Because what happens is when we go back to here, our CEs, and we can say, oh, well, we surveyed plenty, we've got all of the community teams up. Is it a nice to have, or is it something we should have, or no, I should have?
Director Craig, thank you.
Yeah, Chair, and thank you for the question. My sense is, if it's of something of interest to you to be reported, then we can enable that. I just need to check the consistency of that and why we use that language is. Across the Bay of Plenty, we have the New Zealand Response Team, which is a nationally accredited team through NEMA. And I have asked only this week actually that we get regular report to the performance of that team up through to care action. But if you would like to see it here, we can certainly have that forwarded here probably through my report as an update. In terms of the community engagement, and I think the community hubs initiative, which is something we're currently running out in trial, but we're moving out to a further arrangement. We can report on that with the consent of the councils to feed the information set out to us. I will, and why I'm really hesitant in selecting with my language is just testing where the cert team fits between those two activities. So we're going to compare apples with apples if you like to make it relevant. So we can certainly provide that reporting. Happy to do that on NZRT and on the community hubs initiative. And perhaps if I can just pause on the cert and see where I would best represent that data.
Okay, no, I'm happy with that reply. So I know that we're focusing at the top end, and I know we are the macro, it's down to the micro, but I don't want to take our eyes off our council responsibilities within our community, and whether it should be included things just like per council personal responsibility to get it done. because there's linkages all the way through with the elected member training coming up. I'm pretty sure that's going to be an issue.
I think it's a very good question. Yes.
Then just one final comment.
Deputy Mayor, maybe.
So recently we had, at Manatara, the strait was closed for 3 or 4 hours because of another debris flow event. And this comes from, our Manatara councillor. So the Awatariki debris flow was devastating and it was a painful retreat, financially, personally, emotionally for those residents. But our Manatara councillor is also an emergency response person, was really pleased to report that the mitigations that were put in place in between and post that really did their job. And yes, there was flooding from the secondary sort of debris flow downpour event, but it was not what it might have been had we not really taken all those precautions. So it was a painful lesson, but the community is really much more comfortable that it was the right decision.
Great, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I might just ask that that gets passed through to the Regional Transport Committee. I don't believe that was linked to a declaration of any kind, but that would be helpful feedback back to Wakapotahi, the appreciation from particularly the Matapara community. Thank you. There's nothing further. From committee members, please, we do have a recommendation to receive the verbal update from the Director of Emergency Management, Bay of Plenty, for March 2025. I have Hoover and Mayor Moore and a seconder in Tapsell. All those in favour, please signal aye. Those against? There are none. The item is carried. We're moving on, please, to the considerations of items. The consideration of items not on the agenda. Earlier in the meeting, we're at agenda item 8.6. Is the Bay of Plenty Sealand Group statutory appointments, and we do have a rescindment of a local controller, which was circulated under separate cover. Director Crowley, back with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, we'll see this as an addition, which we provided very good background earlier on. This resignation came through post the agenda going out. The resignation is from Gary Ellis as a local controller for Western Bay District Council. And Gary has been involved in seating for, I believe, largely 50 years, which is really a significant contribution he's made to not only this community, I'm sure other communities around the country over that time. So we're losing stall in the system and some really deep experience with this. It's probably one of a reflection. It's accurately take this, my apologies for the liberty. Gary has chosen to resign from his role. He has been he had his permanent role for a while ago with Western Bay District Council, but still engaged, but has expressed his intent to now step back from his function with the city group as well. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you.
I was going to move it and provide further congratulations. Thank you, Hen, for the contributions made over such a long period of time. He was also deputy chief executive for a significant period of time as well, and he's been progressively retiring. I think is the way you could put it. He stepped down from being deputy chief executive a couple of years back, and then has been sort of involved in finishing up certain projects. I think this is probably the next step in stepping back. So yeah, just a big tribute to his contribution again. And I don't know if my colleague Scrimmage would like to say a few words as well, but our thanks go out to him for all his help over the years.
Thank you, Mandy. Now I will open it up to Deputy Mayor Scrimger if you'd like to be John.
Yes, I'd be glad to do that.
We're in your hands, John. Thank you.
Yeah, well, Gary has indeed had a long period. He was an established member of the senior leadership team at Western Bay when I joined council 12 years ago. made a huge contribution to our council and to the wider community organisations such as Civil Defence. And so a great stalwart and worked tirelessly for the residents. Wish him well in his retirement.
Wonderful, Deputy Mayor Scripture, thank you. And we'll just take a moment to acknowledge that our contribution to not only the Western Bay of Plenty community, Harpurhey, but actually across, given the civil defence role, I heard somewhere in the arena of 5 decades. You have to love what you do to be in the role for that long term. And we wish Gary Ellis all the best. I do have 2 recommendations, and I will accept a mover to receive the report for the rescindment of local controller and to approve the rescindment of Gary Ellis. Congratulations, Gary, and thank you for all that you've done for your beloved piece of paradise amongst the Bay of Plenty and to our wider Bay of Plenty Tōna whānau. We have a mover in Mayor Dean, and we have a second. Both recommendations, I have a second in Mayor Tapsell. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, there are none. The item is carried. Thank you, team. We are at agenda item 9, which is the public excluded section. Joint committee will now close the public section of the meeting and move into the public excluded discussion. Specific grounds under section 48(1) of the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act. That is a mouthful, often referred to as Lagoina 1987, for the passing of this resolution of withholding information is necessary to maintain the professional privilege. Can I call for a vote, please, to speak public? I have a mover in Mayor Drysdale. I have a second in Mayor Moore. Those in favour, please signal aye. Those against, there are none. The item is carried. At 12:22 PM, we have a mover and myself, and a seconder in Mayor Luca, to come out of the public excluded section of our meeting. All those in favour, please signal aye. Aye. Those against, there are none. The item is carried. Whānau, we have come to the conclusion of our civil defence CDM group joint committee meeting that is being held today in Rotorua on the 28th of March 2025. Thank you for bidding. Thank you everyone for your attendance and for your contribution for our watohi. We will invite back again in the planning role at least Chris Brewer. If you would like to, if we can invite you back to the table, please, to share close out the and closing from there. Happy to have you there. Thank you, Chris.
Karakia whakamutuna. Ka whakaria te tapu, kia wā te awa te ara, kia tūru ki whakataha ai, kia tūru ki whakataha ai. Omi e uie,
Thank you, Chris. We are so close at 12:23 PM. Kia ora tātou.